Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Embodied podcast with Elizabeth D'Alto. This is officially our third iteration of the show since 2015, and I'm so excited to be here, putting this fresh face on something that I have loved doing for so many years now. If you're a longtime listener, thank you so much for rolling with the evolution, and if you're new here, welcome, welcome. Since 2013, I've been developing a body of work that helps women embody self-love, healing, and wholeness. We do this by focusing on the 4 levels of consciousness: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. In practical terms, this looks like exploring tools and practices to help you get out of your head and into your body. And what that means is tuning into the deep wisdom of the body, the knowing of the heart, a connection to your soul through both of those things, and a new relationship to your mind where the mind serves this wisdom, this knowing, and this connection rather than overriding it, which is what many of us were taught growing up. This show is going to run in seasons now, and this season we're focusing on my Embodied Self Love Framework. We'll be looking at self-awareness, self-knowledge, self-acceptance, self-trust, and self-respect, with a bonus episode on something I know our longtime listeners love: boundaries. If you like what you hear, please share with your friends or on your social media. Subscribe and leave a review wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. And if you want to take a deeper dive into what we're getting into this season, I've created a 3-part Embodied Self-Love mini course. That'll be available starting July 29th, and if you're listening after that, you can still grab it anytime. The information is at the link in my Instagram bio, at Elizabeth D'Alto. Alrighty, y'all, let's get into this self-love. What's up, you all? I'm so happy to be back. Thank you for tuning back in for the podcast. I know it said this in the intro, but if you have been a longtime listener and you have been rolling with me through the evolution and the iterations over the years, I appreciate you. I love you so much. And if you're new here, I hope you find a home. I love doing this podcast. We've been doing this for 5 years now. The show started out as Untamed the Wild Soul. We moved into truth-telling. There's over 300 interviews in the archives. And now I've moved into this solo series format to ground and anchor more into my own body of work, which just continues as well to evolve and expand. So I'm excited to focus on series and seasons now. And this season is focusing on my Embodied Self Love Framework. So this is it's based on a talk that I gave at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition back in 2017. And back then I called the talk Untamed Self Love. And there were 5 big principles: self-awareness, self-knowledge, self-acceptance, self-trust, and self-respect. So this episode is kind of like highlight and overview. And I also want to really dig into some common teachings, misconceptions, and I think also misapplications of self-love. We'll get into that in this episode, and I'll give you an overview. And then over the next 5 weeks, we'll cover the big 5. And then in week 7, we'll do a bonus episode on boundaries. Boundaries are kind of where the big 5, where all those things, self-awareness, self-knowledge, self-acceptance, self-trust, and self-respect, all come together. Boundaries are one of the most self-loving and honoring things that you could create and have and cultivate and just continue to have in your life. And it's not just boundaries with others, but boundaries with yourself. So we'll dedicate a whole episode to boundaries, and then we'll wrap it up in episode number 8. So there's going to be 8 episodes. These will be shorter. The interviews we used to run probably 45 minutes to an hour. My guess is these are going to be more like 20 to 30 minute episodes. But, those of you who know me, I can really riff and I can really tangent sometimes. So we'll see as we go. I have some notes here for myself, so hopefully I don't go on too many tangents. So I know I'm on video here. I wanted to do it on video because I wanted it to feel like we're hanging out in the studio here. So my living room is now a movement studio. This past summer, Starting in June of 2020, I opened a online movement studio. It's called the Embodied Movement Studio, where I live stream all kinds of embodiment classes. Wild Soul Movement, which is my healing modality, Wild Soul Sweat, which are my workout classes, erotic body movement, which is the combination of the sensual type of movement we do in Wild Soul Movement, but also incorporates dance and music in these super juicy playlists. I also do sacred body work now, which is myofascial release, stretching, self-touch, and massage type of work to get up into the fascia of the body and the muscles and the joints and the tendons and all that stuff, which is also on a level energetic work, helps us to release and kind of integrate all the other things that we do in the studio. And I run meditations as well. We do breath-based meditations and healing meditations on a weekly basis. And so, we stream everything. I'm looking out here because this is the living room. I literally rearranged everything. This is like a live work space now. And so I wanted the show to feel like, we're hanging out in the living room, we're having a conversation, because really that's what's happening. And so whether you're watching on YouTube in the videos or you're listening and I'm in your ear on iTunes or Spotify or something or whatever, I hope you just feel thoroughly invited in, included, involved, considered. And I definitely want to hear from you in between episodes. Let me know how this stuff is landing for you. The best place to connect is going to be Instagram. So if you are sharing the episode, share it in your Instagram stories or share it in your feed, tag me. You can shoot me DMs on Instagram. I answer my own DMs. I might not get to it right away, but I do respond to them. And also over the course of these weeks, if you follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth D'Alto, I will put prompts in my Instagram stories to gather and collect some questions from you. So I wanted this series as well to be a little more interactive. So that's what I'll be using Instagram for that. So if you feel like getting involved and participating, that'll be the good way to do that. So to dive into today's show, the first thing that I want to get into are some common self-love teachings, concepts, and ideas that I don't agree with. You can call them misconceptions and or misapplications, like I said earlier. One of these is the idea that you can't love others until you love yourself. And on the flip side of that, sometimes you'll also hear people saying you won't get the love you want until you love yourself. Like the whole concept is you have to love yourself first. But when we are developing true, honest, real self-love, it's just like our love for other people, right? Like anyone who's a parent knows that sometimes you love your kids and sometimes you can't stand them, right? Anyone who's ever been in a romantic relationship knows that you might love your partner, but sometimes you can't stand them. It's the same thing for us. We can develop deep love for ourselves and sometimes not be able to stand ourselves, right? There will still be things that we don't like. There will still be things that sometimes we can't accept or that trigger us or that we butt up against. Again, just like our relationships with other people. So this idea that, we can't have real love with others until we love ourselves first, that's just not it, because we learn how to love in relationship and in connection with other people. Right? We need these mirrors. We need these reflections that we get back. And sometimes we need to be loved so deeply and so well by other people who have just beautiful relationships to love, to see how it's done. Sometimes we literally have to learn. And, when I think about this, I think about one of my dearest friends in the world, Heather Lindeman, who, this is someone I've been friends with for a number of years now, and many years ago, 2016. After a pretty big breakup I'd had, Heather, just the way Heather showed up in my life, like this fierce auntie, mama bear presence, Heather taught me love in ways that I had never seen it, known it, or experienced. It was with such a genuine and like unlimited generosity and compassion. I already had a lot of self-love. And it just showed me how to go deeper, how to be gentler with myself. And one of the reasons why is because Heather would ask me all the time, she still asks me this all the time, how's your heart? And so as we're on these journeys to self-love, like it's gonna be a journey. Our love for ourselves is gonna be up and down the same way our loves for other people are sometimes up and down. We will have challenges because we're building a relationship with ourselves that's rooted and based in love, which is why my framework has 5 parts to it. And those parts are always also kind of evolving. During certain times, we'll be more focused on certain things. We'll be going deeper. We'll come back. We'll circle back in other things. So this is, it's a living, breathing thing, you know? Bell Hooks says love is a verb. It really is. It's an act. It's an action. So developing self-love, it's not just going to be this state. It's not just going to be this thing that you arrive at that you're like, oh. And you might, right? Like there might be a day, because actually in my experience, I remember it was 2011. I sent myself a voice note on my phone because it did strike me. I was walking, I still lived in New York, and I was walking by my apartment in downtown Manhattan in the financial district by Battery Park. And I had a moment of being like, oh, I love myself. I felt it. I felt it in a way I had never felt it before. And, you know, that may or may not happen for you. I'm not going to say my experience will be your experience, but just be careful with this information. You know, we live in the world of memes now. And just because something sounds good on a meme doesn't mean that it's true. You got to be curious. You got to dig in. You got to use your own critical thinking, your own intuition, your own body's system for resonance and see, does this align for me or does it not? And that goes for me too, y'all. As I explore these things with you, always take what resonates and ditch what doesn't. But do be curious if you have resistance to something, because sometimes our resistance will be pointing us towards an opening. One of my teachers says that. The resistance always points to an opening. And whether that opening is to a truth that we couldn't previously accept and now we're ready for it, or whether it's an opening to a different truth from our own inner wisdom, inner authority, or something like that. So either way, this framework that we're going to go through over the course of this series is designed to catalyze you into your own unique experience, unique and beautiful expression of self-love. And listen, for some of us, for a myriad of reasons, often rooted in, you know, how we were raised, our communities, our cultures, our families of origin, it might be easier to give love out than to send it in. And it's a practice. So I just want to remind you that it's going to be a practice over time. If you have a history of perfectionism, if you're someone who's hard on yourself, I'm going to invite you to gentleness, because you're not going to shame, punish, or blame yourself or guilt yourself into a better relationship with yourself. You're going to have to let that stuff go. And we'll talk about that over the course of the series. There's also mass confusion that I want to address around what love actually is. And a lot of our messaging and examples of what we think love is actually codependency. So the self-love framework that I'm going to take you through over the course of this series, we will apply it to ourselves so that we can also cultivate healthier love in our relationships that is not codependent, that is not based on enmeshment, that is not based on, you know, putting our own needs aside, abandoning ourselves, prioritizing others. And again, these are all living, breathing things. There might be some areas of our lives where we're really good at it. We might be better in our friendships or in our relationships with our families and have a harder time in romantic love. That's my formula, right? Like romantic love for me is the crucible of my life. This is where I stumble. It's where my biggest growth edges are. It's where my deepest wounds are triggered. It's just been my experience in my life. Doesn't mean I'm not good at love. Doesn't mean I can't love. Doesn't mean I'm broken. It's just where I have more challenges than other areas of my life. You might have that too. Maybe your relationships with your family are harder for you. Maybe you're in a wonderful partnership and that's like the biggest blessing of your life. So allow these things also to fall into things with nuance and with context, right? We don't do sweeping generalizations here. We apply things where appropriate. So to give you the overview on the framework, it begins with self-awareness, because self-awareness is how we start to relate to ourselves and just observe how are we showing up in life. That's what self-awareness is. Self-awareness is a consistent, mindful practice of observing ourselves and being honest with ourselves. How are we showing up? Not just how we think we're showing up, not just what are our intentions, but what's getting reflected back to us? What's the impact? we're having on others, on ourselves, and on how things are going in our lives through our actual experiences, our behaviors, our choices, day in and day out. Are we satisfied? Are we not satisfied? Or do we have room for ourselves? How do you actually feel? Where's your energy? These are things that we observe. And like I mentioned in the intro, we look at the 4 levels of consciousness: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, because they all connect, they all interact with each other, they intersect in various ways in our lives. And so we look at it very thoroughly when we look at self-awareness. Because sometimes we can't see ourselves, right? Which is why we need other people. So that's self-awareness. From self-awareness, when we see how am I actually showing up, like who am I being, is what self-awareness will show us. Then we go into self-knowledge. And self-knowledge answers who am I and how am I built. Self-knowledge shows us what's our conditioning, what's innate, right? We kind of can, in self-awareness, we start to notice, okay, what's my nature and what's my nurture? What are things that might need healing and might need to be addressed? But self-knowledge really goes, how am I built? And one of my pathways to self-knowledge that I've used for myself and that I teach is I love personality typologies and I love systems like astrology, human design, things like Enneagram, Myers-Briggs. I don't live and die by any of them. But all these systems, there's a newer one I've been looking into, the gene keys, they just give us clues for how we're built. And the reason why I think and I advocate that it's so important to know ourselves and how we're built is so that when we bump into things that we're not good at, that we're not built for, instead of beating ourselves up about that, or trying to be perfectionists or trying to get good at something that we're just not really wired to ever be that good at, we can go, oh, got it. That's not my jam. I'm not good at that. I'm going to need help here. Part of loving ourselves is allowing ourselves to be loved, cared for, taken care of. It's valuing ourselves enough to get help when we need it, right? Which, at various times in our lives, depending on what's going on, we might have different access to things or might not. There are times when it is appropriate and we might need to push ourselves through things that, aren't easy for us. This isn't about that. This isn't about always just wanting to take the easy road. It's about always wanting to take the honoring road. It's about always wanting to honor, okay, cool, I'm actually great at that. So I know this is going to come easy to me. So let me lean into that. Or let me not put pressure on myself to be something I'm not and just honor that, like, this might be hard for me. And it's fine. I might not do this well, and it's fine. So you can see how self-knowledge leads us into the next one, which is self-acceptance. And self-acceptance, this is where we learn gentleness. Gentleness is such an important part of self-love. Gentleness is what allows us to be compassionate towards ourselves, and then, of course, with others as well. Gentleness, generosity, giving ourselves benefits of the doubt, letting ourselves off the hook sometimes, again, not for accountability, not for integrity, not when we mess up, but just in literally the day-to-day, when things don't go the way we wanted to, we can look at ourselves holistically, right? Because we've done the work of self-awareness and self-knowledge and be like, okay, I can accept that. I don't have to fight what is. I can roll with it and I can move forward. I can find a way to move forward anyway. Even if things didn't go the way I wanted to, even if I am not showing up the way I would want to, getting the results that I would want to, even if I'm stuck or unclear, or, one of the big ones is I'm not where I want to be. There's so many shoulds and supposed tos and expectations that are not actually our own, that are not actually aligned with our own integrity and with our own values. And values and integrity are something we'll also talk about in self-knowledge. So next comes self-trust. And you cannot have love without trust, right? We know this in our relationships with other people. You cannot have a strong relationship if there is not a foundation of trust. And so how do we build trust within ourselves? Literally all of my work is rooted in helping people develop self-trust. So in there, we'll talk about discernment, We'll talk about tuning into your body's signals and your intuition so that you can follow your truth. Like your inner truth will point you towards when to trust, when not to trust. And if you can trust yourself, you know how to trust others, or how not, or when not to trust others. And there's also a relationship between trusting yourself and trusting life, right? This is when we get into that spiritual consciousness a little bit, because I don't believe we can have self-trust without spiritual practice, because trust also requires some surrender. It requires some letting go. It requires facing ourselves, seeing where we need to be right about things, and being willing to not be right in order to find what's true and what's highest and what's best for us, and then follow that, right? Trust takes an enormous amount of courage, and it's an ongoing practice. And then finally, there's self-respect. You can't have love without respect either. So when we've done the other 4 parts, the self-awareness, the self-knowledge, the self-acceptance, the self-trust, self-respect is about respecting everything else that you've developed over the course of the other 4. And there are specific ways to do that that are clear once we've gone through the other 4, which is why we'll have a whole episode dedicated to that. And then boundaries are an integration as well of all of those things. And in the boundaries episode, we'll cover courageous conversations. I have a courageous conversation framework. How do you know when you need a boundary? We'll talk about boundaries, not only boundaries with ourselves, but boundaries with other people as well. So I'm really excited for the series. And I also just want to give you an idea like where I am in my own journey, because one of my favorite ways to teach is to kind of just take you along the ride in my own journey. I've been loving on myself for years, y'all. I am one of my favorite people. Which some people might hear that and be like, who does this bitch think she is? Listen, someone said that to me. I did an interview a couple months ago, and someone was telling me that they used to be really triggered by me, especially my boundaries. And that was their thought. They'd see me like setting boundaries online and in my posts or whatever, or having boundaries in the comments with people that I would interact with and engage with. And that was her thought. It's like, who does she think she is? And I stopped her and I said, well, let me tell you who I think I am. I think I am someone who deserves just as much love, attention, care, compassion, and respect as everybody else that I extend those things to. And that's who I think all of you are as well. We all deserve to be acknowledged in our fullness and our wholeness and our humanity and our dignity and treated like grown-ass people. So this is where I am in my self-love journey. I sometimes get caught up in some old patterns, habits, behaviors, beliefs, just like anybody else does. But my turnaround time, I spot it quicker, and I'm willing to walk away faster. I walk away from a lot of things. I say no to a lot of things if they will mean I have to abandon myself. I don't do self-abandonment anymore. Again, not long-term, right? I can get hooked into it a little bit here and there, but I see it much faster now. And that's a big way to measure your progress. Like some of these things are a little intangible. So that's something I'm always teaching my students. How do you measure your progress? You look at your response times and how you respond, right? Your responses will be different. Your responses will be better, more honoring, more loving, more evolved, and you'll be able to have them quicker. The awareness kicks in quicker. Your trust kicks in quicker, and you'll be able to do those things and go with those things and make those choices, take those steps, take those actions. So, yeah, my relationship to myself, truly it's the most important relationship that I have, and it helps to dictate my relationships with everybody else, and is largely informed by my relationship with the divine. So that's where I'm at with things right now. And I'll share more personal stories, student stories, and things like this throughout the course of the series. So that's what you can expect from the rest of the series. And then here's the deal. This is our first episode, so this is airing on July 22nd. And, you might be listening to this in real time, or maybe you're not. But if you are listening in real time next week on July 29th, you'll be able to sign up if you would like to for the 3-part Embodied Self Love mini course. here's what inspired this. So that talk that I gave at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, which was called Untamed Self Love in 2017, every year they run a couple of cohorts and I get messages, I get followers, I get people sending me messages on Instagram, I get people tagging me in videos while they're watching it. It's been an enormously popular talk. I've had clients find me through that talk. And so I was just inspired to go a little bit deeper, right? It was only a 30-minute talk. And so I went through all 5 of those things, just a couple minutes each. And so I wanted to go much deeper. So we're doing that for free here in the podcast series. But if you would really like to go deeper with that and learn and practice and get up in class with me, be able to ask some questions and get some personal feedback, I'm going to do a 3-part mini course. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to spread it out over 6 weeks because one of the ways that I love teaching, I'm really big on integration. It takes some time, right? To practice, reflect, observe ourselves a little bit, see how it's coming up and showing up for us. So from August 5th to September 9th, I'm going to do, I'll alternate. 1 week we'll do a workshop, and then the next week we'll do a Q&A based on that workshop. And that'll be how the 6 weeks goes. Workshop, Q&A, workshop, Q&A, workshop, Q&A. And the 3 parts, I've broken down the framework into 3 parts. Part 1 will cover self-awareness, self-knowledge, and self-acceptance. Part 2 will cover self-trust and self-respect. And then part 3 will cover boundaries. There'll be 2 ways you can join. If you want to just join, or rather if you want to take the mini course, you can just pay $99 and you'll get links to join all the Zoom calls. That'll all be on Zoom and everything will be recorded and the recordings won't expire or anything. You'll get to keep them, which is also for those of you who are listening to this, after September 9th, after the mini course has happened live, you can still buy it and just have the recordings forever and take it. This is part of my Embodied Movement Studio membership. So each quarter I do a mini course. And so for the summer of 2020, this is the mini course. In the fall, we're going to do the Less Control, More Magic course. So if you want to take the course, but you'd also like to kind of get up in the Embodied Movement Studio, see what that's all about, take some classes, have access to the community and me in there as well, same price. The membership is $49.99 a month. So you can do this one of 2 ways. You can get the course for $99, or you can get a 2-month membership to the studio, which includes the course, but also gives you access to all the other classes, meditations, wild soul movement, the erotic body movement, sacred body work, and our community forum and Mighty Networks as well. So I'll have a link for that with all the specifics for you next week. You can sign up for that starting on July 29th. And if you're catching this in the middle of it, you can still, again, you can join anytime because everything's always recorded and you can keep access to it. If you do join it through the membership, your access to it will be through the membership. So that's just something important to note. All right. So welcome to the series. Welcome to the podcast, Embodied Podcast. New, next, fresh. I'm super pumped. Thank you for being here with me. If you liked this, if this was helpful, if you're excited, if you want your friends to join you listening to the series, share this up, post it on social, post it on Instagram, tag me up. I always love hearing from you. I always love seeing how you're engaging with it and how things are landing for you. Follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth D'Alto, at Elizabeth D'Alto. And next week, we're diving into self-awareness. So I'll see you then.